That was el tango Tinta Roja, which means red ink. Now, Soledad, solitude. Now I play a milonga, a little faster. This is El Porteñito, the little guy from Buenos Aires. finish, I'll play a waltz, a tango waltz. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you so much, Maurizio. I'm gonna, I think Megan's gonna spotlight me. We are gonna get started. There we go. Yay. That was amazing. That was so inspiring. I really needed that this week, Maurizio. So thank you so much. Welcome, everybody. We are so happy. I can't believe there's 53 people here. Yay. And people are still coming in. Thank you so much for joining us today and celebrating the Audible edition of Immigrant Daughter Stories You Never Told Me. We are so happy that you're here with us today to celebrate. I am so thrilled that Immigrant Daughter is now on Audible, especially because I am a huge Audible listener and podcast lover. I strongly believe that Audible books open doorways for those of us that learn differently. I know it would have changed my growing up years so much, so I'm so happy that it's such a huge world that's opening up through Audible. I have some thank yous to do now. I'm so grateful to Diana DePito, Beth Anderson, Carrie Donahue, and Jen Basuk from Audible, who championed this book in honor of their dear friend, Christopher Doheny. And thanks also to Chris Sacco, the amazing Audible producer of Immigrant Daughter, and to June, the sound engineer extraordinaire from Out Loud Studios. They cheered me on through 4 days of recording the book, and they were amazing. There's no way I could have recorded this book without my coach, Greg Kuba, whose patience and generosity inspired me, and he pushed me to do much more than I thought I would be able to do. So thanks to all of them. Give them a big hand. I really appreciate them. This afternoon, we have Vesna, Jaksic, Lowe, and René Vasicek doing readings for us. And the incredible Maurizio Najt is going to take us to Argentina with his tango music. There are 2 chapters in the book that take place in Argentina. And so I'm so thrilled to have them here to celebrate. And then I'll be reading at the end. And we also have Megan Franson, my dear friend, who's offering technical support and will introduce me later on and has known me for a lot of this immigrant daughter journey. So I'm thrilled to have all of them here to celebrate with me. And yeah, we're gonna get started now. So Vesna, who I met actually a year and a half ago, but I feel like I've known her all my life, is gonna start us off tonight. Vesna Jaksic Lowe grew up in the former Yugoslavia, and she now lives in Connecticut, where she works as a writer and communications consultant for nonprofit organizations focusing on human rights. She also runs a newsletter on writing by immigrants called Immigrant Strong, and we'll put information in the chat how to sign up for that amazing newsletter. She has written about her immigrant experience for the New York Times, Catapult, the Washington Post, and the New York Daily News. Find her on Twitter at Vesna Jaksic or her website at www.vesnajaksic.com. And yay, thank you so much, Vesna.
Thank you, Catherine, and thank you so much, Maurizio. That was beautiful. I'm sure I'm not the only one who was transported to Argentina with your beautiful music. And Catherine, I feel the same way. I feel like I've known you for much longer. You know, Catherine is modest, so she didn't mention that in addition to working, she recorded this book while homeschooling 2 children in the middle of a pandemic. So she's, you know, not only a wonderful mom and author, but a wonderful, hardworking person to support as well. So if you've listened to or read Catherine's book, you'll know that a lot of it is about searching for her Croatian roots. So I picked an essay that hopefully gives you a little bit of sense about my childhood there. My parents are on the call, so if you see a couple making facial expressions and cringing, you will know why. And I'll just say that this essay ran in Catapult a couple years ago. I'll read for about 10 minutes, so I won't read the whole thing, but we'll include a link after if you want to read the whole thing. And the only thing I'll mention is that it goes back and forth between Croatia and Canada. And if you're a visual person like me, that might be a little confusing just from listening because you don't see the paragraphs, but hopefully that clarifies it a bit. So it's called Raising My Daughter to Be an Octopus Lover. We're in my Croatian hometown for summer vacation when a family friend shows up with a bottle of local red wine and a large pot full of octopus stew. It's very fresh, she says with a smile. I caught the octopus just a few days ago. After exchanging hugs and thank yous, my husband, daughter, and I sit around the dark wooden table my dad built for this stone terrace. I grew up in this house, in a bay surrounded by pebbled beaches and the dark blues of the Adriatic Sea. Red tiled rooftops emerge in between cypress, carob, and pine trees. We open the steel pot and the seafood smell seeps into the warm summer afternoon air. Like many Mediterranean dishes, it relies on olive oil, garlic, and onions for the base. The octopus, tomatoes, and vegetables simmer until the sauce thickens and the seafood is tender, but not too soft. I pour some stew in a bowl for my daughter. She's 18 months old and has never tasted it before. I have no idea what to expect. She tries the potatoes and eggplant first. She cringes, spits them out. Then she starts downing the octopus tentacles with both hands. The thick, dark sauce drips down her white tank top with a picture of a ladybug, her pink swim diaper, and her bare, chunky legs. I have a hard time chopping the limbs and filling her dish fast enough. Ho ba, she screeches with excitement, using the short word for hobotnica, the Croatian word for octopus. My family friend says she's Croatian, all right. I smile at my daughter and pat her back with pride, but I also feel some sadness. We're only here for vacation. We live in New York, an ocean away from my hometown and my friends' octopus catches. Now we go back in time a bit. 3 pairs of skinny tanned legs sprint across a set of stone stairs, then plop down on the wooden deck below. My twin and I are 6 or 7, our sister 4 years older. We wear bathing suit bottoms, flip-flops, and copper-tone sunscreen. I have light brown hair with a white trail of sea salt visible on the loose strands that escape into my forehead. Our dad squats beside us with a plastic bucket full of fish. He's tall with dark curly hair and bushy eyebrows. The container mostly has gray mullets with an occasional red snapper mixed in. Some are still alive, twisting and gasping their final breaths. Dad grabs a fish, places it on top of a ripped plastic bag. He holds it firmly in place with his left hand, then takes a sharp knife in his right hand and scrapes it across from tail to head. We learn to cut the fish open down the middle, pull the cavity apart with our little fingers, then scoop out the insides. With our tanned arms covered in fish scales, we chuck the bloody carcasses in the Adriatic Sea. We live in Dubrovnik, a Croatian seaside town in Yugoslavia. Decades later, it will become famous to Americans as the set of King's Landing in Game of Thrones. By then, Yugoslavia won't exist anymore, and it will take me a cross-Atlantic flight and then another flight to reach this place. Here, history pulls you wherever you go. Medieval walls embrace the old town, its stone fortresses oozing with pride and strength. The Croatian coast is speckled with islands where you can catch crabs on the rocks, spot red starfish on the bottom of the sea, or stroll on pathways covered in pine needles. Smells of cypress, lavender, rosemary drift through the salty air. As we gut the fish, tourists walking along a pedestrian path stop and stare at us with a mix of confusion and disgust. My mom looks on from the stone terrace above and smiles. I grin back, knowing I'm making my parents proud. Now back to Canada. I'm taller than most of my 8th grade classmates in Toronto. Unlike back home, most Canadian girls my age are already shaving their legs, which makes me even more aware that I'm the awkward foreigner who towers above others, looks different, and talks weirdly. I'm embarrassed about my thick European accent, how I mix up 3 with tree, and how I don't swallow the second T in Toronto. I don't know the rules of intramural football or anything about hockey. I find comfort in the morning ESL class, where I'm just another newcomer mumbling her way through a new life. Among the misfits, I fit in. In the afternoons, I sit on the living room couch and watch hours and hours of Full House and Cosby Show in hopes of imitating the actor's articulation. It's hard enough to blend into this new teenage world without all the awkward things that come out of my mouth. I treat my Eastern European inflection as an infection, a virus I could fight off by taking in extra doses of the good stuff. By injecting myself with the smooth sounds of a native speaker's words, I could defeat my poisonous foreign ones. The language barrier doesn't just make you stand out, it makes you lose parts of yourself. Your words, your confidence, your sense of humor, they evaporate. Every blunder makes you hunch your shoulders more, sink deeper into your seat. Every mocking laugh stops you from raising your hand, blocks a joke from leaving your mouth. You make yourself invisible because there's comfort and safety in your accented words not being heard. Afraid of exposing yourself to ridicule, you become smaller, quieter, less important. You cope by fading away. I was 13 when we arrived in Toronto after leaving Dubrovnik, as Yugoslavia was on the brink of civil war. My parents told me and my sisters that we'd come and stay for a year until political tension settled down. They picked Canada because that's where we could get our papers. They chose Toronto because we knew one person there, my uncle's ex-wife. When my Canadian classmates ask me where I'm from, I say Yugoslavia, then former Yugoslavia. When that name vanishes from the atlas and my answers become outdated, I launch into a 3-paragraph explanation about the Balkan conflict. I tell them that Croatia and Serbia and Slovenia and the other republics used to make up Yugoslavia, that we lived peacefully until a toxic mix of ethno-nationalism fueled the civil war, that Yugoslavia dissolved in '92 when it broke off into its former republics, that the name disappeared for good in 2003 when one of the countries it had split into was renamed. My fellow teenagers rolled their eyes, not expecting a simple question to lead to a depressing history lesson. But how do you answer where are you from when your country has perished? At 13, I don't see my nation's death as the birth of my hyphenated identity or the beginning of my life as an immigrant. I simply want a one-word answer like everyone else has, whether it's Toronto, Athens, or Mumbai. It will take me years to have a one-word answer I feel comfortable with. Croatia. As newcomers in Canada, my family navigates a new language and culture and new seafood stores. For the first time in my life, I hear people complain about the smell of seafood. In supermarket seafood sections, I overhear more than one person say, "Ugh, it smells so fishy." Their nose is wrinkled and eyebrows furrowed. In this strange new country and continent, fishy is suddenly a bad thing. Meanwhile, nothing is fishy enough for my parents. When they encounter fillets plopped on ice cubes or occupying the freezers, they cringe and leave in disgust. "Why don't fish have heads here?" I ask my dad while waiting in the grocery store checkout line. "Ugh, fillets," he grumbles. "I'm not buying a fish without a head or a tail." My parents find a Portuguese shop that sells the best sardines. It's a small family-run store in a market on the west side of Toronto, and Dad drives there to buy sardines and olive oil. He goes to a larger seafood store on the other side of the city for fresh salmon and Prince Edward Island oysters. The Greek couple that runs that store greets him. "Good morning, Captain." "Morning, what's fresh today?" he answers. He lowers his head to get a closer look, his thick eyebrows rising up as he examines each creature's eyes. "It's cold and sterile inside and smells like antiseptic. I prefer Croatia's outdoor fish markets where grandmas selling their goods wave their calloused hands while yelling and fighting over customers." My parents never teach me how to grill a burger, but stress the finer points of shucking oysters. I learned to slide the tip of the knife to the base of the hinge, then wiggle the shelf to release pressure. Dad, who travels across the world as a cargo ship captain, tells me where he keeps the oyster knife and gloves before leaving for his 6-month shifts. He gives me tips on how to select fish. Never buy a headless one because you can't check the eyes. The eyes must be clear, not blurry, he says. In the basement of my parents' Toronto home, in the freezer, there's always an octopus or two and fish heads for making soups and stews. "It's for emergencies," my mom says, rolling her R's. In the basement, they also keep cedar planks Dad uses to grill salmon. It comes out soft and sweet, but I like Mom's specialty even more, salmon in a creamy hazelnut sauce. Throughout high school in Toronto, my sisters and I bring our Canadian boyfriends home. Each time, Dad asks the same question: does he like seafood? To some parents, grades, financial stability, and career ambitions are important factors for evaluating a child's dating prospects. But to my parents, affinity for seafood is the make or break test. Dad has a hard time of keeping track of the Bryans and Mikes and Owens, but he remembers which one praised his black squid, ink risotto, lobster stew, and grilled branzino. The fish Croat serve is not disguised as fillets. Fish is not to come into contact with poisons like tartar or ketchup, and objects like fish sticks and popcorn shrimp are not a part of our vocabulary. Frying oysters or dousing them in sauces are criminal acts. When we eat fish, we suck out the insides of the head and chomp the crunchy tail before licking our fingers. A perfectly clean and intact fish bone is the only evidence we leave behind. More than once, I come home to see live lobsters dancing in the kitchen sink, Dad's 6-foot frame towering above them. During a particularly successful lobster season in Newfoundland, we eat lobster salad, lobster stew, lobster pasta a few times a week. $4.99 a pound, Dad says as he removes rubber bands from our crustacean's claws. Cheaper than chicken. Mom is already setting the table, placing a lobster bib and pick on each plate. But somewhere along the way of trying to lose my accent, I lose myself. While learning English, I shed pieces of my old self and language in order to assimilate. I'm not sure when it happens. It takes one move to become an immigrant, but years can pass before you discard bits of your heritage. I don't think about this much until years later when I have a toddler learning to talk. So I will leave it there and we'll send a link to the piece in case anybody wants to finish reading it.
That was amazing. I love that your father would cared more about them eating seafood than other things. That's great. Thanks for taking us to the Dalmatian coast, where I hope to go one day soon. Thank you so much. That was amazing.
Thank you.
Yay, Vesna. We can give a round of virtual claps there. All right. Of course, I put my sheet down on the ground, so I apologize here. Next is a fellow I know pretty well who's at the other end of our apartment right now, my husband. So René Georg Vasicek was born in Austria, the son of Czech defectors. He grew up in the Pine Barrens of Eastern Long Island. He is the author of cybernetic anti-novel, The Defectors. He lives inside his mind. And here we go. Take it away, René.
Thank you. Thank you. Everyone can hear me okay? So yes, hello, people of the planet. It was so wonderful to see the scrolling of different people from different places. So it is about almost exactly 1 year since the Defectors came out. So it's sort of celebrating a birthday in a sense. And this book, I call it a anti-novel because it's not quite a novel, but it's not really a story collection either. It's really 13 episodes that come together in some peculiar ways. I call it cybernetic because I'm very interested in how human beings relate with machines. I grew up in a machine shop. My father had a machine shop and he had many Czech and Slovak immigrants there. And so I am at once fascinated and disturbed by machines and factories. And so it often shows up in my work. Cybernetic is a word that I've done some research on, and it's often credited to an American philosopher and mathematician, Norbert Wiener, who used it in a book in 1948. And also he was very interested in who controls the machine, does the machine control the human? So today I'm going to read from an episode called The Impossibility of Being Here Now. And important to emphasize, this is fiction. I did start out as a memoir writer, but about in 2010, I sort of transitioned into fiction. And this book probably covers that 10-year period, that decade of bringing in different fictions. And nevertheless, I find the architecture of the stories in my own life intermingled in unexpected ways. And there's a vehicle in this episode. It's a Volkswagen Beetle. I call it a superbug because there was a special edition made in 1974 called a Super Beetle. And it's actually a little smaller than the regular Beetle. And it was my father's first car that he bought new for, I think at the time it was $2,000 or $3,000 in 1974. And I inherited it as my high school car. So much later, when it was beaten up, but my uncle helped me repaint it. This Volkswagen Beetle keeps showing up in my stories, in some way or the other. And it is in this story as well. So let me read some of The Improbability of Being Here Now. Midnight. I fire up the Super Beetle and rocket through the Queens Midtown Tunnel onto the LIE. I tilt the rear view mirror and watch the spires of Manhattan shrink. The Empire State Building, the Chrysler Building. It frightens me to leave the city. There's always the chance I'll never return. I pump gas in Hicksville, exit 41. Long Island is a terminal moraine, the glacial debris left behind some 20,000 years ago. In Suffolk County, darkness is real darkness. The pines grow shorter, more crooked. The air smells like salt and gasoline. I know my father is around here somewhere, hiding in the pine barrens of East Central Long Island. One day, he went hunting for wild mushrooms and disappeared. The police found his Toyota Land Cruiser, vintage 1976 pumpkin orange, in the woods behind the power plant. My mother was going to make her special atomic soup. I left Long Island to escape his absence. My name is Ziggy Herbati, and I am a Buddhist psychotherapist. My office is a lime green Volkswagen Super Beetle convertible, vintage 1974. My dog Shep and I travel the country offering the talking cure to anyone willing to listen. Shep and I wear aviator goggles, which get so thick and splattered with insects I can't see a thing. The roadkill thus far, a rooster, a garden snake, a wild boar. The Super Beetle's vinyl rooftop protects us from the desert sun. At high noon in a cactus gulch on Interstate 25 near Elephant Butte, New Mexico, a state trooper pulled us over. Shep, a black German shepherd, doesn't like it when strangers get too close to the car. So when the highway patrolman suddenly appeared at my window, Shep went berserk. Before I had a chance to say anything, the officer drew his revolver and aimed it at Shep's head. That was a big mistake. I rolled up my window real fast, squeezing the patrolman's hand. The gun dropped in my lap. I popped the clutch and sped off. But the state trooper was persistent. He held on, standing on the running board as I accelerated. 5, 10, 15 miles per hour. 25, 35, 45 miles per hour. 55, 65, 75 miles per hour. 79, 80, 81 miles per hour. He was yelling something at me, but I couldn't understand a word. So I rolled down the window to better hear him, and that's when he lost his balance. In the rearview mirror, the officer lay spread eagle on the asphalt. He looked all right, perhaps slightly unconscious. I kept driving. 2 days later at a gas station, I bought a newspaper with the headline, "State Trooper Found Wandering Desert in a State of Amnesia." The police officer couldn't remember a thing. That was great news for Shep and me, but I was sad to learn the trooper lost his memory. He had no idea who he was. His wife Hilda was devastated, as were the couple's 2 small children, Jake and Paulina. I also learned the officer's name, Blake Pollock, aged 39. "Oh, Shep," I cried, "what have we done?" A few days later, Shep and I almost died on a dangerous S-curve right outside a town called Truth or Consequences, New Mexico. We narrowly avoided a head-on collision with a 1974 Volkswagen Carmen Gia convertible with a Saturn yellow factory paint job. Behind the wheel was a pretty and deadly brunette. Karma, I thought, and she was headed the other way. I slammed on the brakes and made a sharp U-turn. Shep and I chased Karma as if our lives depended on it. She led us straight back to Elephant Butte. We cut off with Karma in the parking lot of a Denny's restaurant. She looked mighty hungry. I followed her inside. Poor Shep had to wait in the Super Beetle. "I won't be long," I promised. "I'll buy you a bacon cheddar burger, medium rare." Shep wagged his tail. I sat in a booth right behind Karma. Her back was to me, delicate shoulders, incredible posture. She ordered a Grand Slam breakfast. The plastic menu was the size of a door. I ordered a coffee. Karma pulled out a cell phone out of her purse. "Hello, Mama," she said. "It's Rebecca. I just got into town." I tried not to listen in. It was impossible. "How is he, Mama?" "Uh-huh. Still no change." "Uh-huh. Yeah. I can't believe this. I really can't believe this." She hesitated. "Mama, I'll be there in a few minutes." I ordered a bacon cheddar burger. Rebecca paid. I paid. Shep and I tailed Rebecca's VW to a house on Alhambra Street. The family name was painted on the mailbox in giant orange letters. She parked the Carmen Gia in the gravel driveway. I glided the Super Beetle to a stop. I sat there. Shep offered no advice. I cut the ignition, pulled up the emergency brake, stepped out of the car. Rebecca glared at me. Are you following me? I am. Are you Blake Pollock's sister? Yeah. And who are you? My name is Ziggy Herbati. I'm a Buddhist psychotherapist who specializes in hypnosis. I think I can help your brother. The Pollocks did not believe in Buddhist psychotherapy. Still, they had nothing to lose. Blake Pollock sat in the passenger seat of the Super Beetle. He was an empty cup. I almost envied him. Shep licked Blake's left ear. Okay, Blake, I'm going to count backward from 68. As I get closer to 0, you will feel increasingly sleepy. 68, 67, 66. I must have hypnotized myself. When I regained consciousness, Officer Blake Pollock was holding a pistol to my head, a Smith & Wesson .357 caliber pistol he had found in the Super Beetle's glove compartment. It was his pistol. I remember everything he said. You have the right to remain silent. Oh, I said, the Miranda warning, named for Ernesto Arturo Miranda, born in Mesa, Arizona in 1941. Overwhelmed by a flood of memories, Blake broke down and cried for only the second time in his adult life. The Pollock family was ecstatic. His wife Hilda, the 2 kids, Rebecca, Blake's mother, now they all believed in karma. Even Blake, who decided to let Shep and me go free. And that's the end of the part of the episode. So I'll leave it there. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
That was awesome. Thank you for reading. All right. I'm going to introduce Catherine now, and I'm going to try and remove spotlight, add spotlight, and do an introduction to all of this at the same time. All right, we did it. So my name is Megan Franzen, and Catherine and I have been friends for a long time. Thinking about how old our sons are, 14 now, so about that long, a little bit shorter. And we used to live very, very close to each other, and I'm so excited to be here today celebrating her audiobook, because I know how long and hard she's worked on both the book and the audiobook. So it's a true celebration, definitely of her work, but also in my eyes as I just see this dream coming true for her. So Catherine Kapphahn grew up mostly near the mountains in Colorado with her Croatian mom and her American dad. But for many years now, she's been living between 2 bridges in Queens, New York. Her memoir, Immigrant Daughters, Stories You Never Told Me, received the Center for Fiction's Christopher Doheny Award. She's also received grants from the Queens Council on the Arts, and her writing has appeared in Newtown Library, Motherwell Magazine, the Feminist Press Anthology, This Is the Way We Say Goodbye, and Cure Magazine. She teaches at Lehman College in the Bronx, where her students' stories continue to inspire her. You can find out more about her at catherinekapphahn.com, and I'll put that in the chat so you can explore that too. Catherine?
Thank you. Thank you, Megan. Also, Maurizio will be back after me for a little while, and then we'll do a little Q&A. So just so you'll still get to hear him some more. Thanks to René and Vesna for the inspiring readings, which I enjoyed a lot. Very suspenseful, René. And circle, I like how the circle comes around, and Vesna made me laugh and tear up. Thank you so much. I'm going to read two small excerpts from the book and then read an essay about the book that was just published in Newtown Literary, our wonderful Queen's Journal for Queen's writers. This first excerpt from the book, my mom, Mariana, is a teenager staying at a tuberculosis sanatorium in the former Yugoslavia in the early 1950s on the mountainside behind Zagreb, and her grandmother is visiting her. With a basket of food, Mariana's grandmother came to visit. She bustled about their room, rearranging things. "It's been so long since you've been home, my little one," she told Mariana as she folded her granddaughter's cold hand into her own. "I miss you, Bakica," Mariana blurted, feeling like a child once again. She had been in the sanatorium for half a year. Baka smoothed the bed sheets and asked, "My little Mariana, are you taking care of yourself?" "I'm fine. Ask Ružica. She'll tell you." They both glanced toward the doorway. Ružica was taking a walk with her mother. Baka looked anxiously at Mariana. "Bakica, don't worry," Mariana said. "I am worried. I'm writing to your aunt and uncle in Argentina. I'm trying to figure out a way to get you out of this country so you can get better treatment. I'll never leave you." "Mariana, please be reasonable. You need a better life than the one I can give you. If you stay in this godforsaken country, you'll never get better. You can't make me go." "What is going to happen if you stay here, Mariana?" "I don't care. I'd rather die," Mariana answered firmly. "Come on, stop talking that way. I don't want that. Do you understand? I don't want that for you. I'd do anything so you get well again." "We only have each other," Mariana pleaded, and then she turned away from her grandmother. She felt a sharp ache in her chest. She was well aware there wasn't enough money for both of them to leave. How would they get permission to leave Yugoslavia anyway? She knew that her grandmother saw her escape as a chance to survive. Her father once told her, "Your Bakica has the most common sense of anyone I know. Make sure to listen to her." But now, Mariana didn't want to listen. And this next small excerpt, my mom is 22 in here, and she's just come on her very first trip to America. It's 1959, and she's in New York City. And this letter is the first letter she wrote to my father in English. During her first week in New York, Mariana also found time by herself to compose her first letter in the English language. So far, she had only spoken Spanish to Dave, but being in New York City gave her courage. "Dear Dave, today I decided to stay home because it is too cold and me can't walk. The cold climate remembers me of my country. I forgot how cold it could be. It's like hell. In the house where I live, there are many girls of all nationalities. I become a good friend with two of them. One is American, the other is from Bogota, Colombia. Very nice girls. We decide to skate one day when we have time. I came too late for my course, but I will look for another one just to learn the language. I think I will buy me a radio, a little one, and it will help something. In coffee shop, they say I speak good English, but I don't think so, and you will not think so when you read my letter. Otherwise, it wouldn't be so many mistakes in it. Isn't that right? But please take in count that I don't use dictionary, and this is an excuse, a small one. The people here are very nice and kind. Many of them don't know me, but when they see me, they always say, 'Good morning, miss,' or 'How do you do?' If they are younger, they say, hello, baby doll. Everybody calls me honey, sweetie, etc. One girl asked me, are you from Ohio? I said, no, I am not from Ohio. And then she said, I thought because of your accent. Then I had to laugh with all my heart. You see, life can be very funny. I have to buy me a coat. I saw one I liked. It is a red coat, short one. In Italy, they call this Montgomery. Many teenagers dress like this and looks nice and practical. I think I have to finish now. Dear Dave, write me as soon as you receive my letter. And I like your letters very much. The way you write is very sweet. Write me more than I did. I would like to, but wait, when my English will be better, then my letters will be longer. And now, goodbye, sweetie, Mariana. All right, so this particular piece I developed as I was doing readings when the book first came out, and it was about 10 readings that I did, and through each one I would write a little bit more about this and perform it. And this is the story behind the story of Immigrant Daughter, and it's called Mothers and Secrets. When I was growing up in Colorado, I would have never associated the word secretive with my Croatian mom. I thought of it more like withholding. As a child, I sensed her unspoken history, fleeting and faintly drawn in my mind. Still, where there are family secrets, cracks appear. The one I remember pierced my sleep as a child in the middle of the night. My mom's cry was a soft wail. It hung in the air, this sound of sorrow. I slid off the bed, tiptoed down the hallway to my parents' bedroom doorway. I peered in, listening to my dad trying to comfort my mom. She was curled on her side, facing away from him, lost in a different time and different place. I wanted to see what she saw, hear what she heard, feel what she felt, wherever she was beyond this bedroom. I waited a moment before I asked, Mama, what's wrong? I was confident that I could save her. I was a fearless 9-year-old. Tell me, I demanded. And she responded by silently reaching out her arm to me. I went to the side of the bed and held her slender hand. She wasn't able to find the words to tell me what was wrong on that night or any night for the rest of her life. My Croatian mom wasn't like any of the other American mothers that I knew. She wore black leather pants and high-heeled boots to the grocery store. She wasn't shy to break out into a flamenco step in public, even if it embarrassed her only daughter. She walked 5 miles a day in our sleepy suburb, and men in cars honked at her swinging hips. She had stunning green eyes. She laughed heartily and loudly. She loved me fiercely and would do anything to protect me. When a car almost hit me, she slammed her fist on the hood of that car. I was her last blood relative. She was the last woman in my family. When I was 22, my mom was dying of ovarian cancer in Colorado. She told me confidently, I know where I'm going. Don't be sad, Katie. She was a woman of strong faith, and she was ready to let go, even if I wasn't. When she fell unconscious, I sat on the bed and held her hand. When she took her final breath, I held on. After my mother's death, I was unprepared for the force of grief. Her unspoken trauma was bound to me. It took me a long time to figure out that to become whole, I had to untangle her silences. It would be many years before I heard an interview with the psychiatrist, Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, where he said, the nature of a traumatic experience is that the brain doesn't allow a story to be created. I felt so relieved to know trauma can defy words. At 22, the loss loomed before me. The inheritance of trauma is complicated. I didn't just lose my mom. I lost the family that I did not know. I lost her history. I lost her childhood stories, her orphan stories, her World War II stories, her almost dying from TB stories, her escape from communism stories, and her immigration stories. I didn't know the name of the village where she was born between two world wars. What were my grandparents' names? I didn't know what my mom witnessed during World War II as her parents wasted away to tuberculosis. I didn't know how much her grandmother struggled to keep them afloat in communist Yugoslavia. I didn't know hardly anything about my mom's TB, the disease that followed her throughout her childhood into young adulthood. But when she changed her clothes, I glimpsed a scar beneath her lower ribs. By the time I was 24, in my second attempt at college, I found myself sitting in a circle at a desk at Hunter College in New York City in a memoir writing class. I was terrified, but our lively Italian-American professor, Luis De Salvo, made us believe that we deserved to write, that we each had a voice, that our stories had worth. Even though my mom believed I could do anything, I didn't. And now that she was gone, it was strange that I even ventured into that first writing class. I didn't own confidence when it came to learning. I'd struggled to learn to read. My mom had to teach me at home in a language that was not her own. I'd wrestled with basic grammar, agonized over my writing inadequacies, and lacked the ability to comb out tangled sentences. Still, there is nothing like grief to get a writer started. Writing felt messy, fragmented, confusing, agonizing, and yet somehow I could not turn away from it. My mom's story forced me to become a writer. Around the time I finished graduate school, I discovered that I was dyslexic. This made sense. I knew what it was like to witness my teacher sitting across from my mom, trying to convince her that I should repeat third grade. I knew what it was like to sit cross-legged on the carpet, staring at a jumble of math problems on the board, willing myself to vanish rather than be called upon. I knew what it was like to see a red F glaring at me from my first high school paper on, of course, the scarlet letter. I knew what it was like to fail one, then another college placement test. I knew what it was like to shamefully survive a college remedial English class just barely. I spent my life searching the outside world for clues to figure out who I should be on the inside. I'd spent my entire education breathlessly trying to find the words, hacking through language, trying to translate myself so that I could have worth. I scrambled to make up for, to scream at, to suffocate out my dyslexic mistakes. It was my secret that I didn't know I was keeping. When my newly discovered dyslexia and grief collided, they sent me reeling into something I couldn't grasp. Adrenaline pulsed hard through my body, making me dizzy, shaky, nauseous, making me crumble onto the neatly cut grass of campus, wondering how to get home. It made me crawl on my hands and knees up 5 flights of stairs to my apartment as everything in me whirled in fear. I struggled to stand up. What was happening to me? For years afterwards, there were times I floated beyond my body in distressing separation. My soul split from self. You are not here. Still, I kept trying to do this thing that is so hard for dyslexics. I wrote. I had to prove something to myself. I had to do this for my family. And so I returned to the book about my mom again and again, word by word, sentence by sentence, scene by scene, chapter by chapter, and year by year. There were times I hunched over the computer screen and sobbed. Why was I making my mom suffer the loss of her parents again? There were times I laughed and sang with my Croatian family who was coming to life on the page for me. I got to know Mariana, my mom, as a young woman trying to fight for her life on a mountainside TB sanatorium, Brestovac. Oftentimes, I wondered, how could someone like me do this? But then I returned to my mom's story and escaped with her from 1950s communist Yugoslavia to Italy, to Argentina, to Venezuela. The book became my meditation, and I kept returning to her. I immersed myself in my mom's life. I spent years interviewing my dad and researching. He knew more than I did and was generous with his fact-based memory. I discover one clue about my mom and then spiral a scene from it. I believed that I could find the truth of her history in my imagination. When I finished the first whole draft, I was euphoric as I walked down New York City's sidewalks. Publication seemed right around the corner. Then came years of rejections from literary agents, book contests, and independent presses. This book felt like an underdog. When dyslexia's chronic self-doubt plagued me, I'd stand with my mom in her story, a young woman holding onto the railing on an ocean liner, traveling from Genoa to Buenos Aires across the Atlantic Ocean. While I was writing this book, I went through 3 miscarriages, 2 births, the ups and downs of marriage, my father's cancer treatment, and death. Many times I'd stop writing, and then I'd run into someone who'd ask me, "How's that book about your mom going?" When I felt alone in my life, I got to spend time with my family in the book. I was a child running into the kitchen while my mom stirred a pot of tomato sauce with a wooden spoon. She smiled and wrapped her arms around me. I placed each of my bare feet over hers, and we held each other and swayed while she hummed the theme song of Dr. Zhivago. When I struggled with research despair, people magically showed up in my life. Someone whose mother rode the same ship as my mom did across the Atlantic, someone who worked at the end of my street who could translate a Croatian letter, someone who could help me figure out what it was like to ride a train from Buenos Aires over the Andes to Chile in 1955. My mom never knew me as a writer, but she guided me on the pages where I explored the geography of her illness and immigrations. Believe me when I tell you that throughout my childhood, there were no signs that I could write a book. I didn't keep journals. I didn't jot down words. I didn't tell stories. I didn't dream of a writing life. I didn't fit into any literary identity, but I was transfixed by the realms of the body, movement, and emotion. If dyslexia fragmented my learning life, this book helped me integrate how I learn and who I am. Over time, it taught me my worth. The journey of writing through my mother's life revealed something about my dyslexia that was astonishing. It turns out that my brain is drawn to making interconnections, finding parallels. It can knit together things that at first seem far apart, but are really close together. I might struggle to summon words, but images, sensations, and sounds flow freely, and I just need to translate them. One day, a box with my name on it arrived in our mailbox. "You know what this is?" my husband asked me and our two sons. I shook my head. "Your book." "What?" I said, confused. Even though that's all I had been working on, I'd forgotten it was coming. And suddenly I felt disoriented. I laughed. Let me carry it up." My 7-year-old Rafa piped up excitedly and held out his hands. He proudly carried the box up the stairs to our apartment. My husband cut open the box and handed the book to my 13-year-old son, Roddick. "Cover looks good." He eyed it critically. He had been instrumental in deciding which cover design was going to be the one. We huddled over the book, staring at the photo that my dad had taken on the island of Hvar, the only time I traveled to my mother's country with her in the 70s. In the cover photo, my mom and I are walking down a narrow street, our backs to the camera. We walk toward a painted blue door with lace curtains over the window. There is a hanging lamp, and the stone street is curving downward. The connected stone houses create walls of history on both sides of us. A woman waters her hanging flowers on the balcony above. My mom is mid-step, walking with one hand in her slacks pocket, elbows slightly out. She wears a blue striped fitted short sleeve shirt and holds her bag casually with her right hand. I am a suntan 6-year-old girl with brown pigtails in a dark skirt with a bright green swimsuit. I am mid-step. My right white leather sandal hovers over these polished ancient stones. I follow my mom a few steps behind. For over 20 years, I followed her. I excavated my family secrets. I wondered if her unspoken trauma made me more vulnerable to trauma itself. I know that I experienced how trauma and resilience can cross generations. I'm certain that my body carried my mom's untold stories and losses, and my grief filled me with the need to process them. But what astonished me most when I wrote about her was my mom's grit, her improvisation, her insistence on living her life despite all the hardships. After so many years of withholding myself from the world, I finally emerged because the story demanded it of me. In this book, I claimed an elusive Croatian identity and resurrected the family that I never knew. When I was a child, standing in the doorway in the middle of the night, listening to my mother's cry, I desperately wanted one thing, for my mom to find the words to tell me what haunted her. In giving my mom's history a voice, I conjured an entire language for us both. Her story taught me that if you look hard enough into despair, there is also a universe of hope. Thank you. Thank you. Alrighty. Woo! All right. So Maurizio is going to play for us, and then we're going to do a quick Q&A. So I'm going to introduce him. Oh, wrong paper. Sorry. All right. So first of all, I'm going to just come back to my chair here. Maurizio was very special to my book because he helped me with my Argentina chapters, and for the Audible edition of the book, he made sure that I met his standards with my Spanish. So we helped remind my brain how to better pronounce my Spanish. So I really appreciate all the work and hours that he volunteered helping me make sure the Spanish was exactly right for the book and helping me with my Argentina chapters. So you can give him a hand for that. Maurizio Najt was born in Italy and grew up in Argentina. As a tango pianist, he performed with the New York Tango Trio and was a member of the Tony Award-winning Forever Tango on Broadway. He has performed in theaters, festivals, museums, and countless milongas, tango ballrooms all over the world. As a composer, he has scored independent films, documentaries, and off-Broadway theater productions, such as ACE Award nomination Don Quixote, ACE Award winner Kaleidoscope, a tango for Tita, a tango musical for children, and the musical drama Black Mass. He has also collaborated as an arranger with the Academy Award-winning film director Ang Lee on the film Lust Caution. Currently, he is a pianist at the School of American Ballet and an organist at St. James and St. Matthew's Church in Queens. And I'm just so happy to introduce Maurizio to you. So give him a big hand.
All right. I'm going to play now a tango that probably most of you know by the famous great Carlos Gardel. You know, Carlos Gardel was the biggest tango star that we ever had. Thank you. Thank you. I can hear you, Catherine.
Did you, do you want to play another one more for us, Maurizio? And then we'll take questions and you all put any questions that you have. I know some of you read the book and you have questions, or you might have questions for the other writers. Please put your questions in. And Maurizio, can you play for a few minutes more?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, definitely. Yes. Great. Bye.